Hello everybody, my name is Zen, and welcome back to some Diablo Immortal closed beta goodness. I'm really excited about this video. We're going to talk about my early impressions on the closed beta, and this is coming with, all of the past experience with the game that I have, having played the technical alpha, the closed alpha, now the closed beta, and then also the two experiences I had playing it at the two separate BlizzCons it was available at. So let's just dive in and talk about it. First off, I do have a couple other videos coming, like a Necromancer video that's going to go into a lot of depth of this class and how it works, but you can kind of see some of it in the background footage that I have available. I will say that this is going to be mostly about the weird quality of life stuff that has been added, or the polish that has been added that has just made the game a lot better, or the things that I'm really looking forward to, and just in general my impressions on how the closed beta is working. I'm going to start this off by saying that this is the closed beta and not the final game, so things are bound to change. Keep that in mind, even though the game is launching in the first half of 2022, which is really close in comparison on game design terms. It's likely to have a bunch of stuff change. So I may say something now that I like or that I don't like, and that stuff may change relatively soon in the game. So again, just keep everything with a grain of salt on that one. But let's jump in with the biggest thing that they've added and my experience with it thus far, which is controller support. Oh my goodness, it's good. It's really good. It just works. It feels right. It feels natural playing Immortal on a controller. At first, I didn't like it. At first, I was like, ooh, the weird target snapping, I'm not quite used to, because I'm used to playing the game on like Xbox or whatever, if I'm playing with a controller. Obviously, I play most of my Diablo on PC, but when it comes to my experience playing Diablo on a controller, it's been on the Xbox, and I'm used to those controls. Like, I could jump in and just have the muscle memory and just do what I need to do on that. In this, I kind of had to relearn it just a tiny bit. Honestly, I think this is going to be a bigger issue for someone like me who has played a lot of it on console versus another person, because now I have to break that muscle memory that I have and try to relearn some things. But yeah, so there's, in the game, whether you're using the controller or not, there is a mild amount of target snap. So for example, and this is probably the best example I have for this, is Corpse Explosion on the Necromancer is like a cone, and it's a targetable cone. So if you're playing on the phone, you tap the Corpse Explosion ability. If you keep your finger held down, and then you can kind of move your finger around and aim it in a cone around you. On the controller, you do the same thing. You hold, in my case, what would be the left bumper down, and then with the right stick, you can control it. But if you don't do anything with the right stick, if you just push the button and release, just tap it real quick, it will quickly target a group of corpses around you. And it doesn't always target the right ones. It's a little annoying. It does contextually target based on the direction that you're moving with the left stick as opposed to the right stick. But it just, there are times where it doesn't quite get the one that I wanted to get, and just having to kind of learn how to control that and when to use the right stick and when not to, and just use the auto aim on it. It's weird. It is weird to get used to. But again, this is kind of a me issue more than most people. I think most people would jump in and it would feel really natural, but because I've put so much time into the console version, yeah, it's a little weird to get used to. But that said, everything else works great. A lot of the interface stuff is not available to use on the controller, which I am totally okay with. I don't even think it needs to, because I could just reach down and tap on the screen. And inventory management, by the way, is so much better with a touch screen than it is a controller. So that out of the way, you don't have to use the controller in the inventory or anything like that. You just use the touch screen. It's great. It's fantastic. It works really, really well. And this leads me into a kind of a strange point that I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about when I make my feedback video towards the end of the closed beta, because I think it's an interesting thought, which is that this game, I think, would be a fantastic Nintendo Switch game. Consider Nintendo Switch for a second. It has a touchscreen on it. And then you have the Joy-Cons, let's say you're holding in handheld mode, you have the two Joy-Cons. It's just like using a normal controller. it's actually really quite good. And if you even consider using one Joy-Con, it would still work because you could just use the auto target on your skills when you hit a button. It's just like, it's a weird thought, but it would work extremely well on Nintendo Switch despite it being made for the phone. And that's just a weird consideration to keep in mind. Now, of course, you can rebind everything on the controller. If you so please, you can go into the controller menu and do that. In order to enable the controller, right now in the closed beta, there is no just quick enable. Like, you don't just connect your controller and then the thing's like, oh, you have a controller connected, right? It's not like Diablo 2 Resurrected on the PC, where if you put a controller, on your PC and you play with the keyboard and mouse and suddenly you switch to the controller, everything switches. In this case, you actually have to go into the UI and click controller and then enable the controller. And this happens every time that you log into the game. But with that said, again, this is a closed beta issue. That may not be the case when the game launches. Just a mild inconvenience. It's also odd that the game doesn't allow you to use the controller option until you've hit level 2, which takes you all of like 30 seconds right when you've started the game. But I'm sure there's a good reason for that. So I don't know what that reason is, but I've seen some people complaining about it, and I complained a little bit about it in my features video talking about all the stuff coming with this update. So yeah, it was overall, it was a really good experience using the controller, and I'm glad that they've put that in. I find it far more comfortable. I can play long periods of time in the game without my neck getting strained because I'm not looking down at my phone. Heck, I even bought like this phone holder thing. It's literally just a heavy stand with a rod that goes up, and you just like put your phone on it. With the little hooks and everything. It works great, but it actually works really well for this because I just set it in front of me and I pull out my controller and I just play. When I need to do things on the UI, I just tap the screen real quick and it's great. It means I'm not looking down constantly, and it gets rid of that immortal neck is basically what it was in the previous tests. There has been an extreme amount of polish that has been added, and I say extreme because Blizzard in general tends to polish their games quite a lot. Like one of the best examples I have of this is when the Overwatch friends and family test was going on. I got the opportunity to be a part of that. I was really happy to be a part of that. And I remember talking to Day 9 at the time about it. And our conversation was, why is this game so polished? Like, if it literally felt like they could have just released the game and it would have been fine. It would have done great, but they just kept it in development for that much longer to get even more and more polish on it. It felt like a complete game in the state it was in, but you don't realize just how much extra polish can be added until the game actually launched. And then you compare the early tests with the final game. And it's crazy. It's the same thing here. Like, there's the Codex, for example, which is where a lot of your standard things that you're going to be doing pop in, where it's like, hey, go complete a bounty and you'll get a bunch of battle pass points or stuff like that. Or, go make sure you clear the Tomb of Fahir and you'll get a bunch of battle pass points. So when you open that up, it does this really cool book animation now, and that is so not needed, and it's awesome. And that's what I mean by like just an absurd amount of extra polish that doesn't need to be there, but does enhance the game significantly. And it's just all the little things like that get added in that you don't quite realize it's missing until it has it. And then once it has it, you wouldn't imagine it any other way. And I love that. And this closed beta is full of stuff like that. And I think that it's going to be really exciting to look at the game when it launches and compare it back to this old footage and be like, what has changed and what has been added and stuff like that. Here's another interesting thing to consider as well. It's because the game has been open to Canada and you have all the Canadians jumping in and playing, in previous tests, if you were someone like me who's in the US but got invited to play, we were playing on Australian servers, and we were just playing with the Aussies, and there was, quite a bit of people playing, but not as much, not nearly as much as there is in this test. And it's crazy because you constantly have people talking, which is a nice little thing. You're like, oh, this game is populated. People care, and they're helping each other out. And then you have you're seeing people in the world. They still do the clever thing of limiting who or how many people you can see in specific areas. Same thing they do in Diablo 4. The last we heard, where if you're in a outpost, you're going to see a lot more people. But if you're out in the wilds, you're only going to see 1 or 2 people, because it makes it feel a little bit more dangerous. That's just like a weird gameplay, game design thing that they do to make it feel more dangerous. But I have noticed a significant more amount of people just playing and running around. Like, you go into West March, and the game is just, it lags. It's going to need maybe a bit more instancing going on, or optimization for West March, because it's tough. Like, you go into West March and you're kind of jittering around. It's not the greatest experience, but of course that's what the beta is for, is to figure this stuff out, especially keep adding more and more people. And I love it. I love just how social this game feels, and it's not something that I thought I wanted in Diablo, but continues to be one of the reasons why I think Diablo Immortal is one of my favorite Diablo games. It's why I'm looking forward to Diablo 4 so much, because it shares some of the same aspects of that, where you're going to see people out in the world, and it feels like the game is populated, as opposed to like Diablo 3 or Diablo 2, where you just go and make your game and go do your farming, unless you want to play with some friends or go join a random, game. It's great. It's a really nice change, and I love it. I love that there's all these people. And the interesting thing is you get so many different types of people playing in this test. You have people speaking French, and people speaking Spanish, and people speaking English, and then Russian, and they're all over the place. But I guess that's what happens when you add a diverse region like Canada. I'm looking forward to seeing what this all ends up looking like when the game launches, and like we get a huge amount of population, because depending on where you're at region wise and who you'll be competing against and stuff like that, I think it'll be interesting, because this game is naturally competitive if you do the cycle of strife and everything, where you have this big PvP system. You have only a certain amount of people that can be immortals, where everybody else, if they choose to be, can be shadows. I'm looking forward to seeing how that system works out, and just how it shakes out, essentially with all of these people. It was one of the issues we had in the closed beta, or in the closed alpha rather, which was that some of the PvP stuff took too long. Queues were really long and stuff, and you kind of had to plan it with everybody else, like, when are we going to do this stuff, because otherwise it was just impossible to do. So I'm looking forward to testing that more, jumping in, seeing more about the cycle of strife this time, because I'm not going to have to be worrying about the low population as much. All right, let's wrap up a couple thoughts here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Necromancer. I think it's really fun. I think it's cool and unique. Again, I'm going to have a more in-depth video coming with this. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I immediately had regretted it. I started playing. I got to like level 10. I was like, oh, should I just restart? Because I had already restarted once. When I first logged into the game, it automatically put me in Australia rather than on the Canada servers. And I was like, crap, I had already gotten to like level 15 or 16. I was like, oh, now I got to restart, which isn't very far, but it was mildly annoying. So I jump in, I go to recreate a character, and I was like, should I be doing a Necromancer? Maybe I should. Maybe I should just go back to Monk, because Monk is my favorite of the classes. So I initially went to go start a Monk, and I was like, nah, I need to do Necromancer so I could talk about it and everything. And I got to about level 10. I was like, I'm regretting this. I should have just done Monk. But now that I'm a bit further and I've gotten most of my abilities unlocked, I think the Necromancer is super, super fun and really unique compared to other Necromancers in the Diablo sphere of like where they all kind of shake out. But I'm still gonna say that the Monk is my favorite class, because I nothing can beat that really satisfying feeling of getting a bunch of enemies grouped up and then hitting them all with exploding palm and then blowing it up and just everything dying around you. It is a very unique experience, and corpse explosion is nice, but it's not quite enough yet. So we'll see how I feel about it when I get some legendaries going and everything. I have gotten one legendary on my Necromancer so far, and it increased the damage of my command skeletons by 10%, which is not great. It's not very exciting, is it? Like, ooh. I mean, you know, maybe with a different and maybe with a different legendary that makes command skeletons better, might be a little bit better, but so far it was kind of weak sauce. So overall, I'm really enjoying the Necromancer quite a lot. The second thing I want to talk about before we wrap this up is the microtransactions. I you know, back in the previous 2 tests when they had the battle pass unlocked, well, at least one side of it, not the paid side of it, I kept going, man, I really wish that I wanted the battle pass. Like I really wish I had the other side of the battle pass. And it was constantly making me feel that way, in a good way. Not like I had to buy it, but that I wanted to. I wanted to have that extra stuff. It felt rewarding to have that extra stuff. And I had no problem because the game is really good, giving them, you know, how much ever money for the rest of the battle pass. Now that we're in the testing of the monetization, and we know that the battle pass per month, so it resets every month, costs $5. I'm like, that's not actually bad. a $5 thing to get what is essentially an insane amount of extra stuff that I don't have to farm for. Basically, you know, think of it this way. A person who has a, you know, pretty busy life and don't really get to just sit down and play games like I used to, I'm totally okay with getting a battle pass and kind of speeding that process along and getting a bit of extra stuff. There's obviously concerns about the very top end 1% of players being like, well, do I have to get the battle pass in order to stay quote unquote competitive? Well, probably not. No, you'd probably be fine, but it's just one of those things that it's just a bonus. And then on top of that, they have like this monthly bundle that gives you a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty nice. And I've noticed that after completing certain dungeons, like the Mad King's Breach or the Tomb of Fahir, you get a one-time bundle that you could buy, and it's 99 cents, but it gives you like a bunch of stuff. And it's like, ooh, that is kind of tricky. It seems kind of devious because you're like, oh, it's just 99 cents, right? What, you know, I can afford 99 cents. But when you think about it and you're like, oh, imagine I get like 10 of those in the process of leveling up a character. Suddenly you've spent $10 on this character that you wouldn't otherwise have spent, and on something that wasn't a reward for doing it before, but is now that there's monetization. And I could see how there is a potential for a slippery slope where we're starting to get into that power thing again. Whereas I think that they have a very strong cosmetic potential where, you know, you could sell like cosmetic versions of items. And I think that would be potentially a better way to make money. I mean, personally, I tend to like cosmetic stuff quite a lot. I like my character looking really cool. Some people don't care at all, but a lot of people do. And I think that that's an easier way to go about it without getting into a tricky spot. At least that's my thought so far. So I like the battle pass. I like the monthly little chests that you get, but at the same time, I can see how things might get a little fishy over time. So I'm just going to continue to remain cautious about it and provide the feedback that I need to. And, you know, I think that they're going to be open to feedback on, you know, oh, this was a little too aggressive or things like that. Overall, though, I think it's pretty good. I'm not too concerned about it. And I feel like what's on the store right now is totally fair. So if I were to summarize my impressions so far, it is that it's more Diablo Immortal. Now, again, I have played the previous tests, so to me, it's like I've already played through the story. I know what happens. I've done all that. If you want to see that stuff, make sure to check out the Diablo Immortal playlist that I have. I've gotten stuff from the previous 2 tests, but if you want to see like all the way from the start of the game to the end of the game, do the closed alpha playthrough, because that is a better way of checking out everything. It's more complete. There's more voice acting in it and whatnot. And I think it's a fairly good look at, you know, the leveling experience, even though that's only such a small portion of this game. But the thing is, I'm really happy with the closed beta so far. I think I'm more excited to play now than I ever have been. I think the polish is really good. I think the controller usage is super nice, and I'm not feeling, you know, like I'm pigeonholed into staring down at my phone all the time. And there's no comfortable way to hold a phone for a long period of time while playing a game. So the fact that, yeah, it's just kind of working the way it is with me having a stand. I swear the thing was like $5, so it was totally worth the investment. Oh, one last little thing. I have now played the game on my iPhone 11 because that was what I did for the previous couple tests. And now I have played the game on a Samsung S20, which I mentioned in the previous closed beta video that was generously provided by Blizzard as a loaner. So I'm able to do stuff on this test. And I'm super thankful about that. But if I had to pick one of the two devices outside of the usage of the actual device, you know, I'm not talking about the OS, I'm just talking about the game. I think that I prefer the iPhone. I feel like the game performs slightly better on the iPhone than it did for this test, but that could, and this is hard to tell until I get both things able to play the same test. Obviously, I mentioned that the iPhone or iOS is not available for this one just because they're testing monetization, and that's not something Apple allows you to do in Test Flight, which is their testing app. So yeah, I think I'm going to have to do a side-by-side when the game launches and kind of figure out, you know, what's performing a little bit better. But from my own benchmarks that I was doing back in the closed alpha, the iOS ran a little bit better. There's also a new option that they put into the game, which is a sharpening. So you could turn it on. It makes your phone super hot and runs the battery down really fast. But it's what I'm using for capturing footage because it does make the footage look way better. Whereas before I was complaining, and if you go watch the closed alpha stuff, I was complaining that I can sit there on my phone and look at the game. The game looked gorgeous. And the moment that I put it into an editor and everything, I was like, why does it just doesn't look quite, it just doesn't capture it. Now, obviously my iPhone 11 screen is great. It is super nice, but you know, outside of the color and the color depth, when it boils down to like the actual detail on the characters, it just felt very smudged. Like it didn't look as good as it did on my screen. With the sharpening, it makes it move far closer. So I'm really happy with that feature, but it's not something that you're going to want to turn on because you don't really notice it on the phone, but you notice it on things like my capture card. But those are my impressions so far, my first impressions of the closed beta. I think it's really good. I'm looking forward to playing more, and I'm going to play a lot more. We got a lot more videos to do. I'm very much looking forward to this game coming out. Like, you know, Diablo 2 Resurrected has been having its server issues. There's some resolution coming to that, and I'm happy for that. But I literally just took a break from the game because I didn't want to deal with the issues. And it's hard to want to go back when I have access to the Immortal closed beta because, I don't know, I think it's fun. I actually like Immortal in a lot of ways, more than Diablo 3 and more than Diablo 2. And I think it's going to be the same reasons why I like Diablo 4 very, 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 very much. It's just like the cool social aspects and whatnot and what they're doing with the game. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what my thoughts are once I put in, 100 plus hours into this beta and see how that goes. With all that being said, make sure you're subscribed for checking out more Immortal videos as they go up, and we shall see you guys next time.